We've all heard of cause and effect, the phenomena that one action leads to a series or a singular effect, either positive or negative. And we know that if you put in 20 hours of work for studying for an exam, for example, you'll most likely get, good results. But here's the thing, that phenomena, that explanation can be extrapolated into life as a whole. And as I was reading the book Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky, I began to think to myself, does previous actions lead to who I am today? Do those determine who I am today? And that led me down the rabbit hole of studying cause and effect, determinism, and ultimately, am I actually in control, or does the past actually hold a ton of weight on who I am today? And ultimately, I came to my own conclusion, and I want to share that with you today on ultimately the lie of cause and effect and what actually takes place. So let's dive in. Okay, but firstly, what is determinism? And determinism as a whole was a concept derived from Sigmund Freud, a 20th century psychologist, and generally it's accepted as fact today. But in general, it is the belief that past events influence or even determine who you are today. Generally speaking, three modes of determinism. The first one is genetic determinism. This basically means that, because your grandparents were hot-tempered, that's why you are also hot-tempered. It's in your blood, right? The next one is psychic determinism, which basically means that how you're brought up, your upbringing determines who you are as a person today. And then finally, there's environmental determinism, which basically means that your current environment determines who you are. If your boss is angry at you all the time, that's going to mean that that's going to lead to you doing a bad job, or that's the reason why you're bad at your job, for example, or whatever it may be. Those are just examples of the three different modes of determinism. Now, here's the truth though. All of these things that I just stated do influence who you are today. That cannot be denied as fact. But the truth is, do they actually determine who you are today? That's the question of today's video. Does past events actually determine who you are as a person today? And ultimately, we as human beings all have a unique nature. Something that, other animals don't really have. We have the power to really just be proactive. We have the power to take action and to actually adapt to certain stimuli in our environment. But firstly, let's look at an example of determinism in literature. And let's see how we can actually learn from that and how we can actually model our life in the opposite way, so that we don't fall into this trap of believing that past events determine who we are as a person today. So previously I mentioned that I was reading Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky, and really the theme of determinism is a huge one in that book. It's a huge theme in that book. But also its antithesis, having the power to change and also having courage and ultimately being proactive. So basically the main character, Raskolnikov, he commits a crime, right? And he justifies it by it being for the greater good. And on top of that, he was living in basically a destitute poverty, right? And this woman that he committed the crime on, was living lavishly and obviously, wasn't actually helpful to her society. And he believed that by him committing this crime, it would actually be beneficial for himself, because he needed it more, the people around him needed it more than she did. And he believed that the way he was brought up, by him being far away from home, no family members beside him, being around people who he didn't even care about at all, was the reason why he committed the crime. The way he was brought up, his environment, he believed that was the reason why he committed the crimes that he did. But here's the truth, he committed the crime because he wanted to. He used the mask of his environment, how he was brought up, as a cover-up as to why he committed the crime. But the truth was, he wanted to commit the crime. He wanted to be like Napoleon, these people of history who were life-changing, bigger than life, you could say. But he realized that at the end of the novel, how in vain that was, and he was nothing like that. And here's the common truth. We often try to masquerade or cover up the underlying reason as to why we do something, and we put the blame on past events, or that's the reason why we are the way we are. But the truth is, we have the choice of what actions we take today. We do have that choice. Now, we've all heard that story of, the two sons. The father's an alcoholic, right? And one of the sons chooses to be an alcoholic because his dad was an alcoholic. He says it's in his blood. But the other son chooses not to be an alcoholic because he sees the negative impact that has on his father. So automatically, if determinism was true, it would have to go one way. But here's the truth. As shown in this example, we have the choice to adapt or to follow through with past events. This story shows the difference between a deterministic person and a proactive person. So let's explain those two terms. The proactive person knows that he has the power to choose how he will adapt to past events, to external stimuli, things that were out of his control. He knows he has the power to take a specific action, while the deterministic person believes that he has no power at all. He surrenders his power to choose. But here's the truth. We all have the power to take action on whatever external stimuli comes our way. But the key trait here is having the courage to. Once we realize that we do have that power, it's all the matter of courage, because oftentimes we have to do things that are outside of our comfort zone, right? Normally we might be a shy person or somebody who doesn't, go outside the comfort zone as often. But when we realize that we are somebody who has the courage to take specific actions towards a better future, that's when we can actually remove the pull of determinism off of us. And here's the beauty of it all. Courage is not something that we lack. You don't first become courageous and then take action. All we have to do is just take the first step, take the first action, be courageous, and over time, we will continue to have courage. That's the key aspect here.